September 11th, 2001, a date that everyone remembers. It was the day that America experienced the worst act of terrorism on American soil. Over 3,000 people lost their lives in the World Trade Center, the Pentagon, and in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. Now, 10 years later, our local friends and neighbors take the time to remember the past and move forward to honor the future.
Actually, I was at home. I had a day off, and don't usually have the TV on or anything, so really didn't know what was happening. And a friend of ours called and said, "Hey, turn on the TV." And turned it on, and it was so surreal. You know, you're looking at that going, this can't be happening. It cannot be happening. So I picked up the phone and started calling if we were, going on alert or what we were doing, at the time, and ended up reporting to headquarters that afternoon just to be ready for anything. And I fortunately did not have to go and do anything, but it was just to be on alert. But it was, I cried. It was just so emotionally devastating to see what was occurring. The fear, the anger, just the frustration. I felt so helpless because, especially the profession I'm in. Right. I wanted to get there. I wanted to get there and help. And I sat there, watching it, just going, what can I do? You started immediately thinking about where the targets would be out here.
Mm-hmm, right.
And so that was, let's get a game plan going, just in case something happens so that we're prepared. And pretty much that's what we did. LAPD did the same thing. All the local agencies were, like I said, on high alert. And we have those kinds of responses.
When that first tower went down, I said to my wife, there literally could be 7,000 or 8,000 people in there, depending on how they ended up evacuating. I'm a former Army officer. Okay. I was used to being in an environment overseas where violence or the threat of violence was as close as clicking your fingers. Okay. I was very aware that day because I worked downtown at that time. Okay. I was very aware that if downtown New York was a target, if this was a coordinated attack with at least 2 planes, why couldn't there be 6, 10, 12? Downtown LA is an obvious target.
My husband was working in our office in our house, and I was asleep. It was 6 o'clock in the morning, and he came and poked me, I remember, and he said, "You got to come see this." And I didn't know what he was talking about, so we went into the office and we were watching the news, and it repeated the first plane going through. And then we watched the second plane hit the second tower. And I cried. I just sat down. I don't recall if there was a couch or what was in that room, but I just sat down and cried and was sick and, of course, tried to reach my family and couldn't. I had an interview once for a law firm down in the towers. And I think it was on the 101st or 4th floor. It was really high up, and I was in my young 20s. And I went down and asked the directions to get up to that particular floor, and you had to go up to a certain floor, and I don't recall what floor that was, but it was pretty high up, and then change elevators to continue up. And I remember going in that first elevator bank, and the wind, the sheer force of going up that high, would move the elevator. And then moving to the next elevator bank, I knew at that point I wasn't going to take the job because it was just too high up. I don't think I thought about getting out of that building. I just thought about the uncomfortable feeling of going in 2 elevator banks, and the force of the wind moving the elevator was just too intense for me.
On that morning, some of the first responders at the World Trade Center were New York City firefighters. The men and women who went into the towers saved thousands of lives, and many lost their own. They're simply known as the 343, and firefighters all over the world honor them. Our country as we know it virtually stopped on the morning of September 11th. Airline travel was grounded, businesses shut down. Even the world of sports ceased to exist. Where were you the morning of September 11th?
I was in my barn, mucking stalls, and we had a radio system. We do have a radio system, and we got it on all the time. And all of a sudden, we start hearing about a plane crash into the World Trade Center, and so you think it's just a random, somebody lost control or whatever. And then you hear there's another plane crash, and then it just kind of builds. And from there, I remember just going into the office and turning the TV on and kind of being stuck on CNN for, it seemed like weeks, kind of following what happened and what was going on. And it's just like it's one of those things in your life, I think, that just glues you to the television, and you can't forget where you were when you heard the news. I remember not too long before that, coming in from Newark Airport, and they came through one of the tunnels. I don't know if it was a Holland tunnel or anything, and we ended up going through around Battery Park there and coming by the World Trade Center. I remember looking up, trying to see the top of the building, and it's like you can't even look up to see it out of the cab. And I think you're right about the enormity of what happened there. And it's not just those two buildings. It was such an area. When I went back, probably within probably 6 weeks, and going down to the site and visiting families and things like that. And it's such a huge spot. I have a farm that's like 43 acres at home, and this thing was like 16 square acres. The space that was just toppled, it was just a huge hole, was so big. I mean, it was just like, it would be like, you think, two buildings, it'd be more like the space of Dodger Stadium, and all the parking around it is kind of the area that it felt like it was that big. And you kind of went, wow, this was way more than two buildings, which were obviously huge buildings, but it was a whole area that just got demolished.
Sports, of course, stopped during that time, and I think everybody kind of felt like it was the right thing to do. But what was it sort of like when it got started again? I know for a lot of guys, they weren't even sure if they should go back to play baseball, because here it's September and people are getting ready for playoff pushes, and it was such a strange feeling.
I remember just kind of watching it like a fan, really, because I wasn't back in New York at that point. I was at home, and I remember seeing, Piazza hits the home run, I think, the first day back. And seeing the guys with the NYPD hats on, and it felt different to see it. But it's almost, I think it was good, though. It's kind of like anything in your life. You need just a temporary distraction. And that's really what I think baseball provided at that point in sports, is it was just a little getaway, especially probably in the New York area and Pennsylvania and everything, all things in the capital. It's that temporary back to normal before the reality hits the next day, and there's more stories and there's more people and more things that are happening. So I think for the most part, sports really just kind of give us it's really what it is. It's a little bit of small break in the day, and we go back to our business.
I had a chance to visit it when it was there, and I've visited it since a couple of times. And it's the thing that goes through your mind is, how in the world could something like this happen? I think it was a total disconnect because it happened on our soil. The biggest terrorist attack on our soil here in the United States, and I think there was a disconnect to what we've always taken for granted. Our freedom, and all of a sudden that got disconnected, and I'll never forget the very next. That was in September, obviously, and then in December I took my first commercial flight. I joined the Texas Rangers from the New York Yankees, and I had to go to the winter meetings in Boston and trying to get from the Austin airport to DFW, and then DFW up to Logan Airfield in Boston, and then trying to get home. I called my wife and said, things are never going to be the same for our children as they were for us.
Matter of fact, we was coming back from Scranton, playing the Phillies, Scranton Wilkes-Barre in AAA, and they brought us through. Going back to Syracuse, they brought us through by the City Towers. Like they made like 5 miles so we could see the towers, and we played our last few games in Syracuse in the season. Went back home a few days later. I was at my parents' house, but I was taking a nap, chilling, relaxing a little bit. And my mom said, baby, wake up, wake up. The towers went down. So I'm thinking she's talking about the water towers. We in the country, so the water towers across the street over there. So I thought she was talking about, but it was towers in New York, man. I was like, wow. And I said, Mama, that ain't real. You know how people just do computer stuff. They probably say, baby, it's real. I said, baby, Mama, that ain't real. It's make-believe. She said, baby, it's real. I said, Mom, just relax. Go back to cooking and sweeping and whatever you're doing. I'm finna go chill for a little bit. It ain't real. And couldn't find it was real. It was unbelievable.
So were you at home or were you with the team at the time?
No, I was at home. The season was just over. Yeah, I was at home getting ready because I had 2 weeks to go, another week and a half to go before I had to go out to the Arizona Fall League.
Now, how did you get back there? Were the planes already up and running again by then?
Well, I thought it wasn't going to be at first. We thought it wasn't going to be, but then they was like, you know what, I think we can get out. So it was back up and running by the time the Fall League started.
How strange was it knowing that you saw those towers up when they fell? A lot of people never saw those towers.
Man, that's unbelievable. Just the lives lost, a part of history, a part of the world. That's it's just like, and we'll never see it again. So it's gone. It's forever gone, and so many lives lost. You can't forget. Where you were. You can't forget how it happened and when it happened.
Baseball was, of course, it was September at that point. People were looking for playoff pushes, and everything just came to a halt. And I remember when baseball came back, some of the guys were like, I don't know if we should be playing this game right now.
Yeah, definitely. But, the same thought for everybody. But at the same time, the fans were like, this is America's favorite pastime. This is what can get us by, So if there's no baseball, and they understood how we felt about it. There's a lot of pain, man. Even to the worst guys standing on earth who do the worst things, felt that pain, So it was definitely a tough time for America.
I was in Kansas City. I was with the Cleveland Indians, and I was at the Ritz-Carlton in Kansas City when I heard the news, and I got a call from my wife, and it was one of those, did you hear what happened? And I was sleeping at the time, and so you just kind of turn on the TV, and you're just inundated with all this stuff that's this chaos basically, and so you get on the phone and start calling guys on the team, and then the reality sets in. It's very, very saddening.
You guys were on the road. Of course, all games were stopped. How did you get home, or what happened from there?
I think at that, from what I recall, we were kind of holed up in Kansas City for a couple days, and then we made our way back to Cleveland. And fortunately for us, we obviously with the charter, so we went back into Cleveland, just kind of sad. And I hate to just throw out perspective, but I think it's just reality of what really transpired. And I think that it's there one day, it's not. Then you're talking about so many lives that are affected, directly, indirectly, and obviously the sense of nationalism that kind of came about from 9/11. I think that's not necessarily a silver lining, but I think that's one thing that a legacy that kind of lives on for the peoples and the families that were lost, the lives that were lost. My father served 30 years in the Marine Corps, so I think that that sense of patriotism, I think that continues to be strong for our country.
I remember, right after when the game started again, it was actually the Padres that came here to Dodger Stadium, and I know that a lot of the guys were like, should we be playing, should we not be playing? How did you get back on the horse and keep going?
Well, I think it's just one of those things that as a group of major league players, and with the owners and everybody kind of coming together, Major League Baseball just kind of coming together, saying, hey, in sports in general, just kind of like this is our duty, and this is something to kind of be a diversion of somewhat, and as tough as it was for people to kind of, you felt almost guilty to go out there and play a game while people are grieving. But I think that we looked at it as a sense of it's something that we can do positive for people and as a distraction.
Yeah, and I felt like the outpouring from the major league teams at that time, the outpouring of help and support and volunteering of their time, not only their time, but some of the guys with deep pockets donated a lot of money.